Well, it looks like it's time for another fun "What Did Sean Do in the Military" story. There's a discussion going on Facebook right now about veteran suicide and risk factors for suicide amongst veterans. And Jesse was discussing something with me, and I brought up this thing that happened when I was in the Army that really kind of told me something about mental health. And it's just such a difficult thing to explain over Facebook that I thought, I'll just pull out the microphone and try to explain it. So it was Thanksgiving weekend. I had spent Thanksgiving with a friend of mine whose father happened to be the sergeant major of the battalion that I was in. And so I ate Thanksgiving dinner at my sergeant major's house, which was kind of strange. But at the end of dinner, things kind of wrapped up and I went back to my unit. I walk in and, hey, you. Anybody who's been in the Army knows all about hey, you details. You're the idiot who happened to walk by. Hey, you get to go do something because you're the only person we can find. Hey, you get to go to WOMAC, which is the hospital. What? We've got this guy who is in Ward 4. That's the mental health ward. And he needs guards. What the heck are you talking about? Shut up. Get your uniform on. You and somebody else are going down to WOMAC. They'll explain when you get there. All right. Not like I had any choice in the matter. So I get my uniform on. They put me in a Humvee. They drive me down to WOMAC and they drop me off. Go up the elevator, get to Ward 4 Alpha, knock on the door. They come look at the door. Hi, I'm here. I was told to come here. Gotta guard somebody. Oh, yeah. Come on in. You and this other guy, you have to stay within arm's reach of this person right here. He's not just a patient here. He's a prisoner. Long story short, the guy had been arrested for a very serious drug offense. He was being held prior to trial, and since at the time, and probably still, Fort Bragg doesn't have a stockade, they put him in the local county jail, Cumberland County. Well, he attempted suicide. He told us later that he had faked a suicide attempt. In any case, they decided they had to put him in the mental health ward, and the mental health ward is a hospital. It is not a psych unit in a prison. So it's not set up to deal with people who are prisoners. So the Army required that 2 people be there, one of which within arm's reach for the entire time that he was there, just in case he decided to get crazy. That was another set of bodies that could try to hold him down, I guess. Well, I don't know. In any case, the Army said I had to be there, so I had to be there. So me and this other guy on and off switched back and forth and watched this guy all night long. 8 o'clock in the morning, our reliefs come. So now, if you're following along at home, this is Friday. Friday morning at 8 o'clock, we get relieved. I go back to my unit. I'm thinking, yay, I get the rest of the weekend. Hey, you, guess what? There's nobody else here. You get to go back on Saturday. Oh, great. Be here 7 o'clock Saturday. We're going to take you down there so you can be there at 8 o'clock and change shifts. Lovely. My Thanksgiving weekend is wonderful. Saturday in the morning, they take me down there along with this other guy, and we go up, we relieve the watch, take the job, start watching this guy. Well, it's Saturday, everybody's bored, and the psych nurses, they're like, okay, it's time to play a game. Play a game, okay. So everybody sits in a circle, and she's like, points at me and points at the other guy. She's like, you're here, you gotta play. All right, whatever. So I sit in the circle, and she hauls out the game Taboo. Now, if you've never seen the game Taboo, it's kind of like the old game show. In fact, they made a game show Taboo, but it's like the old game show Password, where they'd give you a word you couldn't say, and you had to get somebody to guess the word. Well, in Taboo, it's not only that word you can't say, but there's like 5 more words you can't say. So, for instance, if mountain was the word, they would also have hill, they might put valley, they might put Everest, anything that would be really obvious for you to say. And your job is to look at this card, look at the list, pick some words that you could say that don't include the words on that list, and get the person to guess the word. Well, the working assumption in this ward was that these people may have had issues, difficulty dealing with their past, dealing with things that had happened to them, because they couldn't express themselves. They couldn't explain what was going on. Well, to give you for instance, there was this guy there. He was a forward observer. He told me his story. He was in the first Gulf War. He was a forward observer for I think it was a cavalry unit. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And he's riding in the commander's talk track, the Tactical Operations Center vehicle. And he's riding along. They get up to a point. The battalion commander says, "Scouts forward. I want you to take a look around the corner," or whatever it was. And they go rolling up, and they sort of look over the hill. There's this big Iraqi army unit like dug in the desert. So they can see it from that area. They send the scouts down to like scout it a little better to decide what's going to happen. Well, these guys in the Iraqi army unit that they have camped in, they start shooting at the scouts. Well, the scouts pop smoke, they turn around real fast, and they come jetting back like, we don't need to get shot. We'll send the tanks up to deal with them maybe. Well, this guy's a forward observer. He's sitting right next to the commander, and he says, "Sir, what do you want me to do?" And the commander turns to him and says, "Make it stop." Well, this forward observer calls back, and he's talking to 18th Corps artillery. They shoot 155 millimeter towed artillery. The particular battalion he was talking to was the Red Dragon Battalion. Dragon artillery is 18th Corps. Red Dragon was one of the battalions. He calls him, he says, "Hey, you, this is me. Target in the open." He kind of describes it. This is the grid coordinate that it's at. And they had, lasers and GPS for certain people there. And he had a laser. He had GPS. He knew exactly where he was. He knew exactly where they were. I mean, he had it down to like the meter, knew exactly where to drop the round. He tells them, "Hey, you, this is me. Got this target. Red Dragon 10, ICM in effect, over." What he just told them was Red Dragon 10, that's the entire Red Dragon Battalion. 10, fire 10 rounds. ICM, improved conventional munition, or cluster bombs, when you fire the fire for effect, which is, first you got to shoot the round to make sure it hits where you want it to hit, and then you fire for effect. So all the battalion tubes, the entire battalion was going to shoot 10 rounds of effectively cluster bombs. And he's figured they're just going to downgrade this. They're going to say, "Yeah, whatever, we'll give you a couple." Problem was that war went over very quickly. Anybody who's ever been in the military, they will tell you, nobody likes bagging up ammunition. It's a whole lot easier to shoot it once you've taken it out of its packing crate. It's easier to blow things up than it is to try to account for it and give it back. It's just a pain. So they said, Red Dragon 10, ICM in effect, out. He's like, wow, crap. Shot over. So the first spotting rounds in the air, shot out. Splash over. That means it's about to hit. Boom, hits the ground. Splash out. Target, fire for effect. Of course, everybody knew where everybody was. The ballistics are not that complicated. They've got computers to do it for you, even back then in the early 90s. Perfect first round hit, right dead center. Shot over, shot out, splash over, splash out, target, fire for effect. Well, as soon as he says fire for effect, this dude down on the compound runs out of one of the bunkers, and he's waving this white bed sheet. Forward observer guy reaches for his radio, picks it up, on his lips to say, check fire, target is surrendered, shot over. All guns had just gone off their first round. There's nothing can be done at this point. The rounds are in the air, and 9 more from each tube are behind it. Splash over, splash out, boom. The place was demolished. There was just dust in the air. It was absolute destruction. Message to observer, target report. Hey guy, what happened? Tell us what we did. Target obscured. So much dust in the air, nobody really knew what was going on. It was just this big old cloud of dust. No problem, basically, he says. We'll send a helicopter. They send the helicopter out. Helicopter's hovering over the exact grid coordinate he was given, blowing some of the dust away. And he hears this guy over the radio. There's nothing here. There's not a single thing here. And this echoed in his head a year and a half later. Nothing. There was no evidence that these people had ever existed. And he had almost been able to say, check fire, target surrendered. But for that 2 seconds, the rounds were already on their way and ended not only their lives, but their very existence on this planet. All evidence that they had existed at all was gone. And you know what? I can totally understand why he would have a problem with that. Well, the psych nurses, they wanted people to be able to talk about their problems and maybe hear from other people, hey, I kind of feel the same way. It's not so much that you're crazy because you feel a certain way. Their view is that you felt that way, and if you felt that made you crazy, to feel that way because as far as you knew, nobody else felt that way, then that could drive you around the bend. But if everybody would say, hey, you know what? I totally understand you. I feel the exact same way. Or if I was in that situation, I'd feel the exact same way. You're a good person. I understand you. I feel for you. You're just like me. I'm just like you. I'm not really sure what they were hoping would be said to this person that would finally get him to go, oh, okay, cool. I can deal with it now. Maybe he'd never be able to deal with it. I don't know. I certainly hope at some point. So what they were trying to do, these psych nurses, they like, let's sit down, let's learn to communicate. And if we can learn to communicate, then we can deal with these issues. But we can't deal with them until we can communicate them to others. Well, so we sit down for this game of Taboo. It was the single worst board game experience of my life. I've seen some dumb board games. I've seen some ill thought out homemade board games. This was an actual board game that I had played in my life and I liked. And it was a disaster. None of these people could think of anything to say. It wasn't like they were given clues and they just looked at you like, what are you talking about? It was they gave the card to these people, they looked at the card, and they vapor locked because they couldn't think of any other way to describe this first word without using that word or any of the other words below it. And they sat there and they stared at the cards and they looked at the card and they looked at each other and they looked at the card and they just sat there until time ran out. They're like, I don't even know what to say. And they didn't even have enough in them to be able to say, I don't know what to say. It was a screaming disaster in slow motion. Well, eventually the deck of cards gets around to me. I draw a card. The word I want to get them to say is map. Underneath it, it says atlas, globe, a few other words like that. And I looked at it and I couldn't think of, well, what am I going to say about this? And then it occurred to me, what's the very first line on the very first page of FM 2126, Map Reading and Land Navigation? It's the definition of a map. A map is a graphic representation of the Earth's surface as shown from above. So I said, it's a graphic representation of the Earth's surface as shown from above. And one of the guys on my team, the guy that would tell me what happened to him in the first Gulf War, he jumped up on his chair. This man had not said a single word the whole time I had seen him in this game. He jumps up on his chair and he starts screaming, it's a map! It's a map! I know that one! It's a map! It's a map! And the psych nurse is just like, what the hell just happened? What is going on? And I'm like, yeah, you got it. And she's like, you're kidding me. He got it. How did he get that? What did you say? And I repeated it. It's a graphic representation of the Earth's surface as shown from above. And the guy's like, it says it right in the manual. Because he's a forward observer. He has to know his maps. It's basically the first thing they taught him in basic training. This is a map. This is how you read it. This is what all those lines mean. This is how you use it to navigate from point A to point B. This is how you use it so that you can properly locate this enemy on the ground so that you can end his entire existence. He knew what a map was. I gave him the right words. None of those words, luckily, were on that list. And he jumped up on his chair and screamed, map, map, map. And that was the only thing anybody guessed the entire game. Not because they couldn't understand the clues, but because there was no clues given. None of them could come up with anything at all to say. So I don't know if this whole communication thing has anything to do with mental health or if that was just their working assumption and it was something they thought they could do. I can tell you that when you get a bunch of people who can't communicate with each other, Taboo is not the game you should play with them. I'm just saying, don't pick Taboo. It's a bad game for this. I've always wondered if I will one day tell this story and somebody will come to me, somebody will send me an email, somebody will say, a friend of a friend and say, I was that guy. I was that forward observer. And yes, I'm better now. Because I totally understood where he was coming from. It bothered him that these people no longer existed. I can totally understand that. And wherever you are, I hope you did get better.